tonight to impose a mandatory 14-day period of isolation on all people coming into Canada from outside Canada. This issue was discussed at length at the Coronavirus Cabinet Committee on Monday. All Canadians have been working very, very hard to practice physical distancing in their lives, and we have for some time now been urgently advising people coming into Canada to self-isolate for 14 days upon their return. We have decided that now is the time to make that measure mandatory. I think we all really appreciate that it is so important to have this self-isolation to protect the health and safety of Canadians. And I may turn to Dr. New to offer some, would you like to offer a public health perspective?
Yeah, certainly from a public health perspective, we've been repeating many times that it's important in terms of physical distancing so that individuals don't expose each other potentially to the virus, and also the public health principle of the 14 days being the outer limit for an incubation period. And so respecting those public health principles, the minister has also said repeatedly, travelers coming back to Canada, you might have been exposed because everywhere in the world there is COVID-19. So when you come back home, it's important to protect your fellow Canadians by self-isolating for 14 days. So this is just an appropriate step, certainly from a public health perspective.
And I will just add, we had the Prime Minister led a call with the premiers of the provinces and territories earlier this week. We have seen the provinces stepping up and taking more clear measures within provinces and territories, including some provinces and territories imposing restrictions on travel from outside the province and territory. I think all Canadians understand that this is a serious situation. It will get worse before it gets better. As a country, we are lucky to have an outstanding national healthcare system and terrific healthcare professionals, but we all need to do what we can, as we heard from Dr. New at the beginning of this, to flatten the curve and indeed to plank the curve. And this mandatory isolation will help all of us do that. Well, I think we announced today some stepped up border measures, which are very important ones. The mandatory quarantine. And I do want to say about those border measures, I trust Canadians so much. Canadians are great, and people have been making real personal sacrifices to self-isolate and to practice physical distancing. At the same time, I think all of us are going to be and feel safer with mandatory quarantine for anyone entering Canada. In terms of essential workers, we need to be really thoughtful about what we do there. And let me give you the example of truckers, something that we have discussed in government and with business and with labor leaders extensively. We rely on cross-border trade for essential goods like the food in our grocery stores, for essential medical supplies. And those goods arrive very often by truck. So we need to be thoughtful about how the people who provide those essential services, including facilitating cross-border trade, are treated. And that is why Minister Hajdu today very specifically said that the mandatory quarantine will not apply to essential workers. We, of course, understand that the situation in the world and on our continent is fluid and evolving. And as the situation evolves, we are constantly, and by constantly I mean every single hour, reviewing additional